Picture this. August 20th, 1966. Two young boys scramble up the rocky slopes of Vintém Hill, just outside Rio de Janeiro, hunting for scrap metal to sell. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the barren landscape as they reach a small clearing near the summit. That's when they see them, two men lying side by side, perfectly still, dressed in their Sunday best. Dark suits, white shirts, ties knotted with precision. But something is terribly, unnaturally wrong. Both men wear identical lead masks covering their eyes, crude shields fashioned from metal sheeting. Their hands clutch small pieces of paper with cryptic instructions. No blood, no wounds, no signs of struggle. Just two bodies positioned with eerie symmetry, as if they'd choreographed their own deaths. What drove these ordinary electronics technicians to don lead masks and walk into death on a desolate Brazilian hilltop? The answer, if there even is one, remains buried in one of South America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Meet Manoel Pereira da Cruz, 34, and Miguel José Viana, 32. By all accounts, they were unremarkable men, living unremarkable lives in the sprawling suburbs of Rio. Both worked as electronics technicians, fixing televisions and radios for middle-class families. Both were married with children. Both were obsessed with the unknown. In the sweltering summer of 1966, Brazil was a nation caught between worlds. The military dictatorship that had seized power 2 years earlier kept tight control over information, breeding whispers and conspiracy theories in every coffee shop and street corner. UFO sightings were reported weekly in newspapers. Spiritualist movements flourished in the shadows, mixing Catholic mysticism with indigenous beliefs and a healthy dose of science fiction paranoia. Manoel and Miguel weren't just casual believers, they were true devotees. Friends described them as serious students of the occult, spending their evenings poring over books about flying saucers, telepathic communication, and contact with extraterrestrial beings. They attended seances, experimented with homemade electronic devices they believed could detect otherworldly signals, and spoke frequently about preparing for some kind of cosmic event. On August 17th, 3 days before their bodies were discovered, the two men told their families they were traveling to São Paulo to buy electronics equipment for their work. A routine business trip, nothing more. They purchased their bus tickets, packed light bags, and disappeared into the humid Brazilian afternoon. But they never made it to São Paulo. Instead, security cameras at a local electronics shop captured them purchasing strange items, batteries, wires, and most mysteriously, sheets of lead. The shopkeeper later told police the men seemed nervous, checking their watches repeatedly and speaking in hushed tones about the appointment. Here's where the story takes its first truly bizarre turn. The bus driver who transported them toward Vintém Hill remembered his passengers clearly, not because of their destination, but because of their behavior. They sat rigid in their seats, consulting small notebooks and whispering about protection and the signal. When they disembarked at the base of the hill, the driver watched them in his rearview mirror as they began their climb, moving with the purposeful determination of men walking toward their fate. The discovery scene reads like something from a fever dream. The boys who found the bodies initially thought they'd stumbled upon a movie set. The positioning was too perfect, too theatrical for real death. Manoel and Miguel lay on their backs, arms at their sides, facing the darkening sky. Their lead masks were identical, roughly crafted eye shields that would have completely blocked their vision. Each man clutched a small piece of paper with the same cryptic message written in Portuguese. 1630. Be at the specified place. 1830. Ingest capsules. After effect protect metals await signal mask. Did you know they tested their blood and found no toxins, yet their bodies showed signs of poisoning? The autopsy results defied logic. No alcohol, no known drugs, no obvious cause of death. But their organs displayed the telltale damage of acute poisoning, their cells destroyed by some substance that vanished without a trace. The police investigation began with confidence and ended in bewildered frustration. Detective Inspector Jose Carlos Oliveira, who led the case, had solved dozens of murders during his career. He understood crime scenes, could read the story written in blood spatter and fingerprints. But Vintém Hill offered him nothing but questions wrapped in more questions. The lead masks became the case's most haunting element. Laboratory analysis confirmed they were hastily constructed from sheets of metal, with crude eye holes cut using basic tools. Why lead? The material's primary property is radiation shielding. It blocks X-rays, gamma rays, and other forms of electromagnetic energy. Were Manoel and Miguel expecting some kind of radioactive encounter? Or did they believe the masks would protect them from psychic interference, allowing them to communicate with otherworldly entities? The positioning of the bodies suggested ritual rather than randomness. Both men were found with their hands folded across their chests, their feet pointed toward the same distant mountain peak. Local spiritualists claimed this alignment corresponded with ancient ley lines, invisible energy channels that crisscrossed the Brazilian landscape. UFO researchers noted that Vintém Hill had been the site of multiple sighting reports in the months leading up to the deaths. But here's the detail that still gives investigators nightmares. The missing notebook page. Police found Manoel's personal journal in his jacket pocket, filled with dozens of entries about UFO theories, contact protocols, and strange dreams. One page had been carefully torn out, removed so precisely that forensic experts couldn't determine what had been written there. What secret did that torn notebook page hold? What information was so dangerous that it had to be destroyed even as the men prepared for death? The investigation revealed a pattern of increasingly erratic behavior in the weeks before their deaths. Co-workers reported that both men had become distant, distracted, frequently checking the sky during their lunch breaks. Manoel's wife found strange diagrams hidden in his workshop, geometric patterns mixed with electronic schematics and what appeared to be star charts. Miguel had withdrawn his life savings from the bank, telling his family he needed the money for important research. Local electronics shops confirmed that the pair had purchased unusual equipment in the months before their deaths, not the standard television repair parts they needed for work, but specialized components, high-voltage capacitors, frequency generators, and metal detectors. They'd been building something, experimenting with devices that their families couldn't identify and their colleagues couldn't understand. The suicide pact theory seemed logical at first glance. Two friends, consumed by their obsessions, deciding to end their lives together in service of their beliefs. But the evidence didn't support this conclusion. Neither man had shown signs of depression or suicidal ideation. Their families insisted they were excited about future plans, not preparing for death. The carefully planned nature of their final journey suggested they expected to return home. Enter the UFO contact experiment theory, and this is where the case veers into territory that makes skeptics squirm and believers lean forward with anticipation. In 1966, UFO contact protocols were serious business among true believers. Books like The Interrupted Journey had popularized the idea that extraterrestrial beings were actively seeking human contact, but only with properly prepared individuals. The lead masks, the precise timing, the hilltop location, all of these elements aligned with contact ritual practices that were circulating in underground spiritualist communities. Remember that viral midnight Ouija challenge on TikTok? The one where teenagers across the world simultaneously attempted to contact spirits at exactly midnight in their local time zones. The lead mask's case might represent one of history's first attempts at coordinated paranormal contact, decades before social media made such coordination commonplace. The cryptic notes timeline, 1630 and 1830, suggests the men were following a precise schedule. But whose schedule? Were they responding to instructions received through their electronic experiments? Had they made contact with something that demanded their presence at specific coordinates and specific times? The government cover-up theory gained traction as details of the case became public. Brazil's military dictatorship was notoriously secretive, conducting experiments and operations that wouldn't be declassified for decades. Vintém Hill's isolated location made it perfect for clandestine testing. Were Manoel and Miguel unwitting subjects in a radiation experiment? Had they stumbled upon classified research and been silenced? The timeline supports this theory in disturbing ways. Both men were skilled electronics technicians, exactly the kind of civilian experts the military might recruit for sensitive projects. Their sudden wealth, evidenced by Miguel's bank withdrawal, could have been payment for participation in classified work. The lead masks might have been safety equipment, protection against experimental radiation that ultimately failed to save their lives. But if this were a government operation, why leave the bodies to be discovered? Why allow the case to become public at all? Military cover-ups typically involve disappearances, not theatrical death scenes that generate decades of speculation. Here's where modern forensics makes the case even more intriguing. In 2019, a UFO enthusiast group raised funds to exhume the bodies for advanced toxicological testing, only to be blocked by the city government citing public health concerns. What were they afraid modern science might discover? DNA evidence that could identify unknown substances, isotopic signatures that might reveal the source of the mysterious poisoning. Contemporary analytical techniques could potentially solve the lead mask's case in ways that 1960s forensics couldn't imagine. Gas chromatography could identify exotic toxins that remained undetectable 50 years ago. Radiocarbon dating of the lead masks might reveal whether the materials came from standard commercial sources or specialized government stockpiles. Digital reconstruction of the torn notebook page might be possible using techniques developed for archaeological research. The case has inspired countless imitators and urban legends across Brazil and beyond. Every few years, another pair of bodies turns up in remote locations, often with makeshift protective gear and cryptic notes. But none have matched the eerie precision of the original Vintém Hill deaths. None have combined the perfect storm of mystery, timing, and unanswered questions that keeps this case alive in the public imagination. Social media has given the lead mask's case new life among conspiracy theorists and paranormal investigators. YouTube channels dedicated to the mystery rack up millions of views. Reddit threads dissect every detail with the obsessive attention of amateur detectives. TikTok users create dramatic reenactments that introduce each new generation to Manoel and Miguel's story. The psychological profile of the victims adds another layer to the mystery. Neither man showed signs of mental illness or delusion in their daily lives. They were functioning members of society, reliable employees, loving fathers. Yet something compelled them to abandon their families and walk towards certain death on a Brazilian hilltop. What kind of belief system could motivate such extreme action? What kind of evidence could have convinced rational men that their sacrifice was necessary? The spiritual dimension of the case can't be ignored, even by hardcore skeptics. Brazil's religious landscape in 1966 was a complex mixture of Catholicism, African-derived traditions, and imported spiritualism. Umbanda and Candomblé practitioners regularly conducted rituals involving communication with spirits and other worldly entities. Could Manoel and Miguel have been following instructions received during a spiritual ceremony? Were they attempting to bridge the gap between the physical and spiritual worlds using their technical knowledge? The timing of their deaths corresponds with increased UFO activity reported across South America in the summer of 1966. Witnesses described unusual lights, strange aircraft, and close encounters throughout Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. Military files from the period, declassified decades later, confirm that official investigations were underway. Were the electronics technicians responding to something real, or were they victims of mass hysteria fueled by Cold War paranoia and science fiction fantasies? The influence of popular culture on the case cannot be understated. In 1966, television shows like The Outer Limits and movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space had popularized the idea that extraterrestrial contact was imminent. Books about flying saucers topped bestseller lists. The space race between America and the Soviet Union made cosmic themes part of daily conversation. Manoel and Miguel lived in a world where contact with alien intelligence seemed not just possible, but inevitable. Yet the specific details of their deaths suggest knowledge that went beyond popular entertainment. The lead masks weren't inspired by science fiction movies. They demonstrated understanding of radiation physics that required technical education. The precise timing and location suggested access to information that wasn't publicly available. Someone had given them very specific instructions, or they had developed very specific beliefs based on very specific evidence. The case files, stored in Rio de Janeiro's police archives, contain hundreds of witness statements, forensic reports, and investigative notes. But key documents remain classified or have mysteriously disappeared over the decades. The original autopsy reports were allegedly destroyed in a fire. The electronic equipment found in the victims' homes was confiscated and never returned to their families. Even the lead masks themselves vanished from evidence storage sometime in the 1970s. This pattern of missing evidence fuels ongoing speculation about official cover-ups and hidden truths. Were the masks analyzed by government scientists who discovered something too dangerous for public knowledge? Did the autopsy reveal evidence of exotic poisoning that threatened to expose classified research? Or were the disappearances simply the result of bureaucratic incompetence and poor record-keeping? Modern investigators who've attempted to solve the case face the same frustrations that stymied police in 1966. The physical evidence is gone. The witnesses are dead. The families of the victims, after decades of harassment by conspiracy theorists and paranormal investigators, largely refuse to cooperate with new research. The case has become its own self-perpetuating mystery, with each generation of investigators adding new theories, while the fundamental questions remain unanswered. The psychological impact of the lead masks case extends far beyond Brazil's borders. It represents something primal in human experience, the fear that there are forces beyond our understanding, agencies beyond our control, truths that we're not equipped to handle. Manoel and Miguel walked up that hill believing they knew what they were doing, confident in their preparation and purpose. They were wrong, and their deaths serve as a warning about the dangers of certainty in an uncertain universe. Would you dare don a lead mask and climb a haunted hill at dusk? Tell us why in the comments. Because the truth is, we're all walking up our own versions of Vintém Hill, following our own cryptic instructions, trusting in beliefs that might lead us anywhere. The only difference is that most of us don't know it. The lead masks case endures because it combines our deepest fears with our greatest hopes. Fear that we're not alone in the universe, hope that death isn't the end of the story, fear that our governments hide terrible secrets, hope that the truth will eventually emerge, fear that rational people can be driven to irrational acts, hope that there's always more to discover about the human experience. In the end, maybe that's the real mystery. Not what killed Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana, but what made them live. What drove two ordinary men to seek extraordinary experiences? What convinced them that the unknown was worth dying for? In our age of social media, dares, and viral challenges, their story feels more relevant than ever. They were the ultimate influencers, inspiring decades of speculation with a single, perfect, terrifying act. The hilltop where they died remains unchanged, a patch of scrubland overlooking Rio's urban sprawl. Visitors still climb to the summit, searching for answers or simply paying their respects to two men who dared to believe in something larger than themselves. Some report strange sensations, unusual electromagnetic readings, or brief glimpses of unexplained lights. Others find only wind, rocks, and the eternal Brazilian sky. But everyone who makes the climb carries a piece of the mystery back down with them. Because the lead mass case isn't just about two dead men, it's about all of us stumbling through life with our improvised protection against unknown forces, following cryptic instructions toward uncertain destinations, hoping that someone somewhere is sending us the signal we need to make sense of it all. Share this video with someone who believes in ghosts, and let's see if you can find any new clues together. Because after 57 years, Manoel and Miguel are still waiting for us to solve their final riddle. The masks are gone, but the mystery remains, and it's watching you right now.